You are welcome back into the NFL with AJL, episode 100. Wow. You could have been anywhere else on the world, but you're right here tapped in with me on the show. And for that, forever grateful. Happy April Fool's Day to you guys. Hope it hasn't been too harsh or people tricking you too much on this insane holiday, if you want to call it a holiday, I guess. Hope you had a great March. Hope you're geared up for an excellent April, as Q1 of 2025 is absolutely behind us. Time does not get any slower the older that we get. And at 27 years old, I'm still struggling to understand that. But let's get into what we have on the podcast tonight. Of course, before we get started, y'all please make sure to like and share that stream wherever you may be watching. Subscribe on YouTube. Hit the bell so you never miss a post. Of course, that QR code in the corner of the screen is every bit of social media and podcast content at NFL with AJL. If you can't find me, you're simply not looking hard enough. As always, I appreciate you guys for being here on the show tonight. Share the stream wherever you may be watching. And thank you for the engagement that you continue to give us. 100 episodes strong. Guys, this really means a lot to me being here for episode 100, between the what off season days, the petty sports days. If you guys look at my backdrop right there, that's some of the past podcasts that I did. Now here with the NFL with AJL, episode 100, our third NFL draft together, our third NFL season together that's coming up. And I just could not be more grateful to bring you guys this content in my own freedom, in the comfort of my own home studio, a couple times a week and multiple times on social media. And for episode 100, you know we got a packed one. NFL draft, edge rusher, and tight end rankings, new NFL rule changes, and the NFC East first round draft targets for the 2025 draft. That's going to be the best first round draft choice for every NFC East team in the 2025 draft. But to start off the top, we're going to give you our top 5 edge rushers in this draft. And we'll take it from number 5 going up to number 1 so we can build a little bit of suspense for you. At number 5, I've got Nick Scorton out of Texas A&M, 6'4", 285 pounds, ran a 4.7 in the 40, 4 sacks, 4 hits, 28 hurries, a forced fumble, and 37 tackles on the year, graded at 80.1 by Pro Football Focus. And this guy has good anticipation really on reading the option, a good mix of power, good mix of speed as well. He has a quick and aggressive spin move that's one of the best in the class, and it's very critical with that initial contact that he has on offensive linemen. Very solid first step and explosion off the snap of the ball almost immediately. He's got maybe one of the most advanced pass rush arsenals with his moves, considering his effective club swim, the cross chop. You got the two-hand swipe moves. He really brings the heat as that power rusher, and then he converts it to speed and force. Really, he converts that speed to force really well against the offensive lineman that he played against in college football. And NFL scouts and whoever drafts him is going to be looking for him to do more of that. And this guy's motor is always running. One of the hottest, most unstoppable motors, and just drive to go 110, 125% on every play, because that's what you need out of an edge rusher. That's what you need out of every player in the NFL, right? But especially when you're getting after the quarterback, being such a pivotal role in a defense. We know a great edge rusher takes the pressure off of everybody else in the secondary and on the defense as well. Now, I think he could bend better around the edges and around the corners of the better O-linemen that he's going to see in the NFL at the next level. And sometimes he'll kind of stall out when his first move is negated. So he could get some better counter moves in his arsenal. Again, he's got that club swim, the cross chop, the two-hand swipes, which I think are very solid. I think he could develop better in those counter moves and learn to chain those rushes together so he doesn't get so negated on that first move. And I think he could be a better technique tackler as well, leaving some opportunities, leaving some tackles out on the field that ultimately I thought were his for the taking. At number 4, give me Mykel Williams out of Georgia, 6'5", 260 pounds, ran a 4.77. He had 5 sacks, 6 hits, 15 hurries, 2 forced fumbles, 21 tackles, and he graded at 78.4 per Pro Football Focus. And that grade did feel kind of low to me because I watched a lot of Mykel Williams this year, being a Georgia Bulldogs fan. This is the potential premier run stopper of the class, with 37% of his snaps coming in the run defense. He doesn't have the bend or the speed that a James Pierce, Jack Sawyer, maybe an Abdul Carter have in this class, but his first step in his get off does need some noticeable work when you start to look deeper at his tape. I think his power is pretty comparable to James Pierce out of Tennessee. He's a smart defensive end. I think he's good at reading options and making the right decision of the pursuit to the ball carrier. And he can be versatile inside or out, hand in the dirt, standing up. Like, he will get after the passer if needed, but his skill set, his real defying trait is going to be him stopping the run. And I think his knowledge of the game and his anticipation as well could really set him apart from others in the draft class. He has a lot of reps at defensive tackle as well. Like I said, being that potential premier run stopper. His motor is always running hot as well. Again, how effectively, how many times, how often can you give 125% on every snap to get after the quarterback and disrupt the foundation of an offense to where everything else kind of puts more stress on the offensive parts versus, again, when you are a good defensive end, a good edge rusher, getting to the quarterback is going to make everybody else have an easier job. Now, he does need to develop a more diverse pass rush arsenal. He really relies too heavily on his power. I'd like to see some more moves like Nick Scorton brings to the table. And he does show some inconsistency with hand placement in his pass rush moves as well. He'll occasionally play too high in his stance, allowing offensive linemen to get leverage on him. You could flip Nick Scorton and Mykel Williams if you wanted to, but I believe the undisputed top three in this class are going to stay as they are. And at number 3, give me Jack Sawyer. And I'll just be honest with you. Jack Sawyer out of Ohio State, he has a case to contend with James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee as the second best, spoiler alert, edge rusher in this 2025 draft class. I mean, I love what I see from Jack Sawyer on tape. 6'4", 260 pounds, ran in the 90th percentile. A big boy can move at a 4.6, 10 sacks, 16 hits, 38 hurries, 3 forced fumbles, 2 of those that he actually took in to score for the scoop and score, 59 tackles, graded at 90.5 by PFF. So the second highest graded defensive end in the class, if I'm not mistaken. A very strong, explosive first step like James Pierce, like Abdul Carter. Great bend and speed like Abdul Carter has as well. But he matches it well with strength. Something that Abdul Carter doesn't do or necessarily have in his arsenal is strength as a pass rusher. And he can keep that strength up throughout the entire pass rush rep, like a Mykel Williams, like a James Pierce. I think Jack Sawyer's anticipation at the line of scrimmage and his, and on option plays between the quarterback and the running back, very good. Some of the best in the class. He can get his hands on the football, whether he's batting it down, forcing a fumble, scoring on a scoop and score. I mean, this guy really just has a nose for the football. Again, I would argue he's the second best defensive end in this class, and his nose for the football is the best in the class, arguably. He made big plays all year long, especially in the college football playoffs, whether it was against Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, you name it. Obviously against Notre Dame in the national championship, and he can sniff out the run very well. Strong hands with excellent placement on blockers. I really didn't find too many weaknesses in James Pierce's game to where it was really, to where it was really glaring to me. Hold on, let me make sure that we're live on YouTube real quick, guys. I'm pretty sure that we are. Yeah, we are. Okay, it just wasn't showing in the top left. But I say we got to be live on YouTube out of all places for episode 100, but glad we are. Again, you guys get in the chat, get in the comments. Let me know what you're thinking so far of the top 5 edge rushers in the 2025 NFL draft. At number 2, give me James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee, 6'5", 245 pounds, ran a 4.47 as a defensive end. He is super athletic like Abdul Carter. That's in the 99th percentile for defensive end 40 times. 8 sacks, 4 hits, 43 hurries, a forced fumble, 38 tackles, graded at 87.1 per PFF. He also has a great first step and explosion as well off the line of scrimmage. Good bend around offensive linemen as well. But it's not going to be like Carter. I will say that it is not going to be like Abdul Carter with the bend in this class, but James Pierce does use his hands very well. He's got excellent spatial awareness. He's a scheme versatile player, a good mix of power, good mix of speed, and that's where he can have that advantage over Abdul Carter. I think he's got very good counter moves as well, whether it's a spin, whether he's shucking a blocker off of him after that initial contact with the offensive lineman. But he definitely could get more creative as he uses a lot of speed in his play style, which if you get it up against more of those savvy offensive linemen, the ones that can just get to their spot, set their feet well, you're possibly not going to get around them if they can get in front of you to cut off that speed angle in your play style. Now, he can chase down in the backfield very good, one of the best in the class at that. He's good at pushing inside of blocks on the offensive line, which really shows his strength in that aspect. Good vision from side to side on the field. Again, when you come out running a 99th percentile for your position at a defensive end, running sub 4.5, they're going to be dangerous from side to side on the football field. No question about it. Now, he can get too focused on rushing upfield sometimes. Sometimes he'll occasionally create escape lanes for mobile quarterbacks. He'll kind of get pushed too far up the field to where a quarterback can just climb the pocket. So there are some things he could work on in that aspect. And then the number one edge rusher in the 2025 NFL draft class is none other than Penn State's Abdul Carter, 6'3", 250 pounds, ran a 4.48, also in the 99th percentile, very similar to James Pierce. They both have similar play styles. I just think James Pierce is a stronger edge rusher. Abdul Carter had 13 sacks, 10 hits, 43 hurries, 2 forced fumbles, 68 tackles, and was the highest graded defensive end in the class at 91.3. And this guy's a finesse edge rusher, the best first step, the best explosion off the snap in the draft class without question. The speed and the bend is his game, and it is also the best in the class. He is a big-time finesse edge rusher. Now, he's versatile. Don't let him fool you. He can go from defensive end to defensive tackle if need be. He consistently beats those good tackles to their spots and forces the quarterback to abandon the clean pockets if it's necessary. And he does have background as an off-ball linebacker, which I kind of see that in his play. I think that's why his speed and his bend and his finesse is so eye-popping on the tape, because it shows up not only when he's, playing D end or D tackle, but with that background of an off-ball linebacker, he's got very solid spatial awareness, the ability to sniff out the screens and the outside runs if needed. I mean, he can chase somebody down. There's no question about it. Good closing speed in those situations, but he doesn't have any power really at all in his game. If you turn on the tape, you'll see a lot of times he's getting pushed into the dirt. He's just getting pushed out of the play. So he does need to be, grow his frame a little bit, need to have some more power rather than speed, finesse, and bend in his edge rushing play style. And his lower weight for the position really reflects that too. I do think he needs significant growth in terms of counter moves on the line, and he could use his hands better in pass rushing technique. His tackling form can break down in space at times as well. But overall, Abdul Carter is a premier elite prospect, and he will be taken with one of the first picks in this NFL draft. There is no doubt about that. So from the 5 to the 1, at number 5, give me Nick Scorton. At number 4, Mike Williams. Number 3, Jack Sawyer. Number 2, James Pierce. Number 1, Abdul Carter for the top 5 edge rushers in the 2025 NFL draft. Let's dive into some NFL rule changes here on episode 100 of the NFL with AJL. And I thought it was pretty funny that the NFL was dropping some rule changes the day of, the NFL dropping some rule changes the day of April Fool's Day. Like, how are any of us supposed to take this seriously when you're dropping some pretty pivotal rule changes, some pretty pivotal articles and storylines about the league on this day? So the NFL has implemented some new rule changes. At the NFL's annual league meeting on today, April 1st of all days, the NFL bylaws state that when this meeting happens, 75% or 24 out of the 32 NFL teams in the league have to agree to make rule changes. So the first one that came about is both teams can now have the ball in overtime for the regular season. It's going to be a 10-minute period instead of a 15-minute period like it is in the postseason. Of course, we saw back in 2022, the league approved both teams getting the ball in overtime regardless of the result of the opening possession. Obviously, we recall the first ever Bills-Chiefs AFC Championship matchup where everybody's talking about maybe not that game specifically, but there was a postseason matchup to where both teams didn't get to touch the ball. And we heard a lot about that. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact game of which it was, but I remember that being a conversation. And we see that this rule has now been, turned into the favor of that. But the regular season was the opposite at the time. If the opening possession was a touchdown in the regular season, the team who scored won. The game was over. Now it's uniform between regular and postseason. And I think this is good, all things considered. I really do. I get the stakes are higher in the postseason, but if you're trying to determine a winner in one of the best sports leagues on planet Earth, let both teams touch the football in a very clutch moment. I mean, we remember when it was only field goals. You could kick 3 on the first possession, and that's how you won. That's how my Saints got to the Super Bowl against the Vikings in 2009, because that was the only thing they needed to do. And I was never a fan of that. So when the league made it to where now it had to go past a field goal in order to determine the overtime winner, I was like, okay, that's fair. Both teams need to touch the ball. And when you went to this new format, you saw it in week 9 of this year. the Chiefs and the Bucks played. Baker Mayfield sees the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes win the coin toss, and he's just like, oh, God. He was like, okay, here we go. Because he knows how elite Patrick Mahomes is with Andy Reid and Travis Kelce in overtime, that if they touch the ball first, they were more than likely going to win. That doesn't have to be the case anymore. The Bucks actually lost 2 games this season like that. Now, the Bucks still won the division. They still went to the playoffs. We understand how their season played out. But if you want to have $100 million professional cream of the crop, top 1% of the 1% of the top 0.01% playing in this sport, you got to let both teams touch the ball. So I'm here for it. It's going to be more exciting to see. I'm glad the NFL made this rule change. Now, we do have another rule change, and it's about damn time the NFL puts this into action as we have a new first down system. Sony and the NFL have had a long-standing partnership with technology. Sony's Hawkeye system will now measure all first downs, and the chain gang will still be present for backups as well. The league did just announce that today, April 1st, also when they had the official, the annual league meeting. The official use of the virtual measurement system consists of 6 8K cameras for optical tracking of the ball's position. It's an efficient alternative to the process of walking chains onto the field and manually measuring whether 10 yards have been met after the official has spotted the ball. Now, of course, like I said, the chain gang, the traditional crew who does come out and do measurements when needed, they will remain on the field in a secondary capacity. But it's good to see this finally implemented because we see this in multiple sports around the world. I know that Major League Baseball does it. I want to say that soccer and tennis do it as well to determine whether a ball is in and out. We see Major League Baseball doing it with the strike zone. So, again, it's just about time that we see the NFL take this into account because we see Josh Allen try to run the tush push, try to run a quarterback sneak in the AFC Championship against the Chiefs. I think he got over. It seems like over half the world thought he got over. But when you bring out the chain gang and you measure and you realize he was short from what looked like the millions of people watching from home on CBS could tell that he made it, that was a prime example as to why you needed this system. Because you could argue that the Bills got robbed out of an AFC chip last year. I'm not saying that they could have won, even though we know that they could have in the grand scheme of things. But with that call being short, Josh Allen and the Bills could have really benefited from this. The total process will take about 30 seconds, saving up to 40 seconds over the measurement via chains. It notifies on-field officials of the measurement's outcome with virtual recreations of the measurements produced in real time for the in-stadium crowds and the broadcast audience. So the people at home, the people in the stadium will be able to see how this works first and foremost. And you're just going to be able to see all the results of it. And that's what people in the league want that are watching this sport at a high level. Guys like me that get on here and make content about this league. You want the transparency. You want to know that what's being called on the field is right. You want to know that they have the technology and the cameras in place for it to be correct. Especially if the NFL is about to hold a triple header on Netflix and you got to pay for Peacock and Paramount and Hulu and YouTube TV and Netflix just to watch a 17-game regular season. So you damn right, with the price of NFL Sunday Ticket, if we're going to be paying that money to watch your league, then we need to have the correct first down measurements. That's all I'm saying. We got to have the correct first down measurements. We have to. I think it's great. I do. I'm going to be excited to see how it plays out. Now, there will be kinks in the system, no question about it. There will be things throughout this process that are going to need to be snuffed up. But I feel like unless there's some measurement that comes out, because there's going to be chips in the ball, there's going to be like certain body parts of the players apparently that they're going to be able to measure with these multiple 8K cameras and multiple cameras around the stadium that are projecting not only to the fans, but to the fan base at home watching. There's going to be multiple measurements for it. Unless a measurement comes out that has a high level of discrepancy or ambiguity, I think this is about as perfect as you can get with measuring first downs virtually in the NFL. Now let's get on to another more serious NFL rule change that I thought was going to be given up on. I thought that it was over with when I posted it a month ago that the Packers had petitioned the NFL specifically. It's one of the first times. It's a very unusual rule petition change that they went after the league with. They were targeting the play specifically in the tush push. It wasn't a concept of a play, but they wanted the specific motions of the play to be outlawed by the National Football League. Well, thankfully, that conversation was tabled, aka they're going to discuss it at a later date, more than likely in May between the 20th and the 21st in Eagan, Minnesota. The owners are going to gather for their spring meeting, again, of those dates of May 20th and 21st out in Minnesota. And the NFL owners do plan to continue discussions about the Eagles and the Bills and the Packers and other teams in the league that run the tush push. Thankfully, they tabled this proposal on Tuesday to ban it. They're going to have more discussions about it. 16 of the 32 teams in the NFL voted to ban the tush push. But again, you need 75% or 24 teams to vote for it. And what's the irony? That it was a dead 50-50 split. It was owners, general managers, coaches, a lot of that annual meeting, or not a lot of it, a good bit of that annual meeting was taken up by this rule change. Again, that meeting did happen this week. They are targeting the Philadelphia Eagles, who did just win the Super Bowl, of course. It was written specifically for the play, the petition was, unlike most rule proposals, and would, quote, prohibit an offensive player from immediately pushing a teammate who is lined up directly behind the snapper and receives the snap. There were some concerns about the safety risk of the tush push, which I think is comical because the NFL's health and safety department had no data that suggested one single injury that occurred as a result of the tush push between the Eagles or any other team using it. The Bills and the Eagles were the only other team that used it regularly. The Bills and the Eagles were the only team that used it regularly last year, as they called it 65 out of the 101 times in the league. So 65% of the tush pushes were going between Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. I mean, let's just call it what it is, which is fine. It's fine. And this, real quick, this whole notion about boring football and get it off my screen because it's just a boring play. It's a technical savvy play that if you have the right players in motion, like a big ass strong quarterback in Josh Allen, or a quarterback who can squat 600 pounds and get skinny between the tackles like Jalen Hurts and just a great runner of the football, and great offensive lines like the Eagles have had for the years of running it, that's when it's doable. Because again, I'm going to present it to you. If it's such bad, boring, easy football, whatever, if it's easy football, why aren't other teams doing it? It's clearly not bad because there's no injuries coming from it. Now, yes, there are other parts of the league out here saying that, it could become an injury. Injury possibilities are likely. Well, injury possibilities are always likely in the NFL when you're talking about playing the sport of football, especially at the highest level in the world. Some are saying injuries could happen sooner rather than later. Okay, we're speculating over the number 0 right now. You guys realize that? We're speculating over the number 0 for the tush push. Injuries. So, and yeah, it might be a boring play to watch, but it's snap, it's done, it's over. Y'all act like the Eagles run it 10 times a game. Y'all act like other teams in the league aren't running it. And again, only half of the league voted to outlaw it. Maybe what would have been the odds if they just needed 17 teams to vote against tush push? They still wouldn't have been there to get the majority. It was split dead down the middle, 50-50, so they're going to keep the rule. Committee Chairman Rich McKay said last week and reiterated on Tuesday that the league generally frowns on rule changes that only target one or two teams. Back in 2005, the NFL prohibited players from pushing ball carriers for much of its history before changing that rule again in 2005, citing the difficulty of officiating it. During Tuesday's meeting, McKay said the Packers offered to change the focus on potentially reinstating the historic rule. It would also ban players from pushing ball carriers downfield and thus eliminate the focus on the Eagles' play. So now what they're trying to pivot to is the Packers will petition to have offensive linemen not be allowed to push the running back or the ball carrier further down the field for extra yards like we see happen a lot, which I'm here for it. If you can keep forward progress going and push them down the field, then great. Now, you can't pick them up and carry them, but if you can keep the momentum going for the forward progress and keep it going, I don't have a problem with that. Even the Eagles owner, we've been very open to whatever data exists on a tush push. There's just been no data that shows it isn't a very, very safe play. If it weren't, we wouldn't be pushing the tush push. I'm glad that the chairman said, you don't ever like any discussion in a room to be projected towards one or two teams. It's never something that they've ever liked doing. And I really appreciate him coming on the record and saying that. He's saying, could we go back and talk about reintroducing the 2004 language, study it, understand it, and talk about it again when we get to May? That's kind of what he's opening up to now. The Packers president said, really what we talked about was going back to the language that they had in 2005 when the change was made. So that would basically prohibit pushing the runner. There are safety issues being considered, Roger Goodell says, but there is very little data on the play again. And I'll just come out and say this too. I don't know if, hold on, one more thing. The Eagles have scored 27 touchdowns and recorded 92 total first downs on it in the past 3 years. Specifically this year in their Super Bowl run, they scored 11 touchdowns and 32 first downs this season while they were going on their Super Bowl run. Nick Sirianni and the owner Jeffrey Lurie call it a precision play. They call it a tactical play. I can't disagree with them there. Is it easier for them to say yes because they're so good at running it? Obviously. But until it's outlawed, they're going to keep running it. And I just think it's a matter of multiple teams around the league getting pissed of how unstoppable it is. But if it's in the rules, figure out a way to stop it. For the most part, I think the NFL has done a pretty good job at making rules that aren't ambiguous and make sense for the flow of the game. But having said all that, I will say this. With it getting this much traction, I do think we're on the verge of having the tush push being banned. Unfortunately. Because if you've already got half the team bought in on just the tush push itself, if you're now going to expand it to a wider horizon of, 20 years later, now we're not going to have ball carriers be able to be pushed forward, I think that right there could be the make or break. Now, my gut tells me most people in the league would vote against that because that's just been a pivotal part of the league for the last 20 years. If you can get your offensive lineman pushing someone for extra yards or for, to get into the end zone, then so be it. Like, that is a part of the rules. But it does feel like more traction is kicking up here to where the tush push could be banned. And again, I don't have a problem with the play. There's low injury history, really no injury data on it. Now, yes, there's two teams running at 65% of the time. But get out of this whole, it's boring football, it's bad for TV. The play lasts a matter of seconds. As soon as they line up, you know what they're doing. They get the first down and they move the chains. So let's pull back a little bit from this whole the tush push needs to be banned because I don't think it does. I like the fact that it's such a tactical play, and maybe I'm a little biased because I like the Eagles and I really love Jalen Hurts. Who knows? But y'all get in the chat, get in the comments, let me know what you think of this play being potentially banned. Do you want the tush push banned? Do you think it should stay? What are your thoughts on the new first down system in the NFL and the new overtime rules also? This has been the NFL with AJL, episode 100. Wow. You guys could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're right here tapped in with me on the show. And as always, I'm forever grateful for that. Y'all, please make sure to like and share that stream wherever you may be watching. Subscribe on YouTube. Hit the bell also so you never miss a post. The QR code there in the corner of the screen will give you every bit of social media and podcast content if you can't find us. I promise you're simply not looking hard enough at NFL with AJL. And as always, we're sponsored by Buy and Sell with AJL for all your worldwide professional real estate needs. If you're looking to buy a home, sell a home, or invest in real estate, this is the real estate team that you need to be working with. You can get on their monthly newsletter, their value emails. You can get on their monthly neighborhood market reports if you're curious about the price of a home, your home, another home you've been watching, a friend's home that's maybe waiting to sell. Contact these guys and they can help you out without question. Great photographers, great media company to help with their listings, solid transaction coordination to get you from the moment you go under contract to the closing table. And you can get in on their newly acquired 6-month-old, however you want to look at it, real estate meetups that are being held in South Atlanta, Peachtree City, Georgia, at Lion Creek Brewery. The South Atlanta real estate meetup is also held by Buy and Sell with AJL. And we are sponsored by HyperX.com. If you are looking for a great company to be able to provide with podcast headphones, whatever the case is, with podcasting or gaming, the lower third that just came up on the bottom of the screen right here is who you need to be working with, is who you need to be consulting with. HyperX.com for all your podcasting and gaming needs. Not all of them, but if you're looking to create content in the podcast, in the gaming space, I think it's a great website to stop by. Use code AJL at checkout for 15% off of your order. Use code AJL. Again, that's AJL, as in the NFL with AJL, at checkout for 15% off of your HyperX.com order. I appreciate y'all so much for being here for episode 100. Let's go ahead and jump in to the second half of the show, as we have the best first-round draft targets for every NFC East team in the 2025 NFL Draft. Let's start off with the Eagles at the top. The Super Bowl winners, we know they're going to have the dead last first-round draft pick, number 32. I think all signs point to safety here for the Philadelphia Eagles. You lose C.J. Gardner-Johnson in a trade to the Houston Texans. You get a very subpar offensive lineman back in the trade. I didn't like the trade for the Eagles at all. And I think when you're looking at where the Eagles are falling in the draft, where some of these prospects are grading out, where we're seeing some of these players mocked to from the tape, from the research that I've put in, I think it's a slam dunk to say that the Eagles are going to draft Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia, one of the best safeties in this damn draft. And here goes Howie Roseman again, going to get the Georgia Bulldogs. And can you blame him? Malachi is a very, very solid player. Been making plays the entire 2024 season. Malachi Starks is one of my favorite Georgia Bulldogs. And I think the Eagles have a very good chance at selecting him here at number 32 in the first round. It'll fill a hole in C.J. Gardner-Johnson that was left. Yes, Malachi is going to be a rookie, but being in a secondary of a Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Reed Blankenship, next to Reed Blankenship, he would be the other safety in Malachi Starks. Being coached by Vic Fangio would be the biggest remark to Malachi Starks' career. I mean, that one situation alone can turn him into an all-pro player. Maybe in his rookie year, because we know how great Vic Fangio is. Having the defensive line in Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Nakobe Dean. Crazy. All four Georgia Bulldogs right there. Another Bulldog in Malachi Starks. Another Bulldog in the secondary in Keely Ringo. You got Zach Bond. I mean, this would be a premier landing spot for Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia. Get Vic Fangio coaching you year one in the league. You could emerge like Kyle Hamilton did early on. You could emerge like Marcus Williams did his first couple years in the league as a safety. Drafted by the Saints, has since played for the Ravens. So I think Malachi Starks to the Eagles at 32 is a lock. They lose C.J. Gardner-Johnson to trade, and Howie Roseman loves his Georgia Bulldogs. On to the Dallas Cowboys, who are picking at number 12 here in the NFL Draft. I think they have a big need at corner. I'm going to go Will Johnson, corner out of Michigan. One of the highest rated corners in the draft, arguably the highest rated corner in the draft. We see him win plenty of big-time games with Michigan when needed. And Will Johnson is just a very solid corner that could come in year one with the Cowboys and provide with the 12th overall pick in the first round for Dallas. Because we see that Trayvon Diggs is dealing with another knee injury. He just had surgery on it back in January. He tried to play through it a couple times this season, and I have a lot of respect for him for that. Again, just had surgery at the end of January. This is the opposite knee that had the torn ACL in 2023. So it's good because it's not the same knee, but you also are going to be cautious because it's now both knees, pivotal parts, the foundation of your lower half when you're a borderline elite, if not already elite corner in Trayvon Diggs. It's going to be some cause for concern. They've only had Deron Bland, Jordan Lewis, and Trayvon Diggs on the field for one game, and it's entirely all three of them together as a unit. And that's tough because when Deron Bland was brought in, when Jordan Lewis was drafted, there were high expectations for both of those guys, especially with Deron Bland. And we've seen what Trayvon Diggs has turned into. So I think if you add in Will Johnson with Diggs, with Bland, with Lewis, I think you're looking at a secondary that might not get turned around in its first season together, but it's not a bad pick at 12. I think all things considered, when you look around the Cowboys roster and you see how bad that defense was last year, you got to go and grab Will Johnson. I mean, it feels a little solid with a Dante Fowler, Mozzie Smith, Odigizua, Michael Parsons on the defensive line. So, like, you feel a little confident there. You're looking for a little more out of DeMarvion Overshown, which I really loved him coming out of Texas. So I think all signs point at number 12 towards a corner. Yeah, maybe they could draft a running back. Obviously, like, we know that. That would be a very vintage Cowboys pick. They could also use a wide receiver as well. But I think this running back and this receiver class is deeper than, maybe this cornerback class. So I would take a corner if I were the Cowboys at number 12. We got the Washington Commanders drafting at number 29 overall in the first round of the NFL draft. And I think when you take a look at their roster in its entirety and what happened last year, you got to go edge rusher. I think the Commanders need to take an edge rusher at number 29. Now, I think Nick Scorton, Jack Sawyer might be there to hang around. I would love Jack Sawyer to the Commanders at 29. I mean, are you kidding me? Even Nick Scorton. Mike Hill-Williams, more of a run stopper. I would like Scorton as an edge rusher over Mike Hill-Williams. Now, I know I just put Mike Hill ahead of him in my edge rusher rankings, but again, you could have swapped them, so, like, take that for what it is. But if Jack Sawyer is there at number 29, I think Jack Sawyer is a first-round pick. That's just me. He pops off the tape, and I just gave you at the beginning of the show with my defensive end rankings, with my edge rusher rankings, why I believe Jack Sawyer is the third best edge rusher, in this draft class. If someone takes him higher than 29, I don't blame them. Commanders were 12th in the league in sacks. Now, they did lose Jonathan Allen in free agency, and they do need a premier edge rusher because when you take a look at the Commanders' depth chart, you got Cleveland Farrell, Dorrance Armstrong, Bobby Wagner, if you want him to rush the edge, Frankie Louvu, but those guys are linebackers. So you don't have a premier defensive lineman. Yeah, you have Javon Kinlaw, you have Deron Payne, but you need to go get that game changer at the edge rusher position. And that's what, Chase Young was brought in for. That's why he was drafted. There's a reason he was that number 2 pick out of Ohio State. And rightfully so, because what he put on the tape was undeniable. But he hasn't done that and didn't do that for the Redskins. Excuse me, not the Redskins. Y'all don't cancel me. It is April Fool's Day after all. For the Washington football team / the Commanders. And his durability was some of an issue. So they had to move on from him. 49ers, now obviously he's with my New Orleans Saints on a gross contract in some ways. But I think you have to go get an edge rusher. Because if you want higher pressure rate, if you want more quarterback hits, if you want more hurries, more bad decisions to back up the secondary of your defense, not the bad decisions backing it up. But you have a solid secondary. I mean, you get Will Harris from the Saints. You trade for Marshawn Lattimore last year. Mike Sanders still is a sneaky good secondary player. He was making plays all year for Washington, and he was very solid coming out of Michigan, winning the national championship as well. So I think you go get Jack Sawyer, go get a Nick Scorton. One of those two guys, edge rusher at 29 for the Washington Commanders. They need a game changer there. And then the New York Giants at number 3. I'm going to say corner is their biggest need because they have multiple defensive needs, but they feel more set at defensive line with Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, who had a solid season last year and the year before, and then, of course, Brian Burns, who's still there. But you have Paulson Adebo, who just showed up at corner. You have Javon Holland, who just showed up at safety. Both of those guys out of free agency. And those feel like their best players, their best positions in the secondary. Because outside of that, you've got Deonte Banks, Drew Phillips, Tyler Nubin. You want to go get a corner. And I think if you're picking at number 3, we all know the player that's been mocked to the New York Giants number 3, and that is Travis Hunter out of Colorado. Travis Hunter, the defensive back out of Colorado, should be the number 3 overall pick for the New York Giants. It's just what it's got to be. And if you can find some packages for him to come in and be a wide receiver, that's even better. I'm sure Russell Wilson would absolutely enjoy that because you do have Malik Neighbors. If Jalen Hyatt ever wants to come around, he could be an absolute burner. He really could. I would love to see him become more. I really, really strongly believe that Travis Hunter is the pick for the New York Giants at number 3. It's just the most glaring need for the Giants. You got Tyrone Tracy. Yeah, you could still take a quarterback at, number 3, but you got Russell Wilson in the building. Yes, that's not the long-term decision. And if Cam or Shador are taking it 3, then I don't blame them. But I don't believe you take a quarterback at 3 with more than likely a new head coach and a new general manager coming in after this season. Because I just don't see the Giants winning any more than maybe 7-8 games. Is that enough to save them from the 2023 and 2024 mishaps under Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll? I'm not sure. But we know usually with a new GM and a new coach, new foundation built, and you usually want to go select your own quarterback. So I don't believe they would burn a draft pick this year on a quarterback. So go get Travis Hunter. Go get the generational player, the generational two-way player. Have him have him put over at corner and just watch him eat. Watch him go to work. Watch him be there with the Paulson Adebo, with the Javon Holland. Have a defensive line in Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau actually help take some of that pressure off of the secondary. So the best first-round picks for every NFC East team in the 2025 NFL Draft are as follows. The Giants at 3 need to take a cornerback in Travis Hunter. The Washington Commanders picking at 29th need to take an edge rusher. I would love to see Jack Sawyer there. The Cowboys at number 12, they need a corner also. Take Will Johnson because I don't think Travis Hunter is going to be there at number 12. I know he won't be. And then the Eagles picking last in the first round at number 32. After they trade away C.J. Gardner-Johnson, I believe they need a safety. Go get Malachi Starks out of Georgia. Y'all get in the chat, get in the comments, let me know what you think about each NFC East team's best pick in the first round for the 2025 NFL Draft. And to round out the show, let's get into our top 5 draft tight ends, starting at 5, making our way up to number 1. At number 5, give me Gunnar Helm, tight end out of Texas. The University of Texas. He is a Longhorn, 6'5", 241 pounds, ran a 4.84, so he's not going to be your quickest tight end. 60 catches, 786 yards, 7 touchdowns, graded at 62.3 by Pro Football Focus. This guy was mostly an inline tight end with a lot of snaps taken there instead of at the slot. All of his measurables, unfortunately, range from slightly above average to below average for the position. Now, he is a natural hands catcher. He tracks the ball like a veteran. Only 2 drops in his entire college career, which I think is elite for the record. He's really good at using his body control in traffic, boxing out defenders, high pointing the football. He's kind of deceptively shifty after the catch. He doesn't go down on first contact like a lot of the bigger tight ends in the NFL that are just hard to take down on the first hit. He's very good in zone coverage. He finds those soft spots. He's a pretty smart blocker who excels on the move as well. Pretty effective at sealing the edge, or he's even got some good split zone action and climbing to the second level defenders to really help out with the run game. He's reliable in pass protection. He's a red zone weapon. We talked about it earlier, just now with the body control in traffic, boxing out the defenders, high pointing the football. You can see that in the corner of the end zone if needed. He's a stronger defensive ends that go up against him can potentially overwhelm him at the point of attack in his run game. In the run game, he does have limited experience running a full route tree, so you're going to want to see more of that brought about at the next level. He does have average speed running a 4.84, and his blocking hand placement at times could lead to him having holds in the NFL. At number 4, Give me Colston Loveland, tight end out of Michigan, the Wolverine. 6'6", 248 pounds, ran a 4.7 flat, 56 catches for 582 yards and 5 touchdowns. He was graded at 85.9 by PFF. Now, this is more of a slot tight end, no question about that. He's a very good athlete who plays like a big wide receiver. He's got a big catch radius as well, good natural hands, catches the ball away from his frame, plucks it out of the air. Great route runner with his timing. His breaks at the tight end position is very sought after. He'll also box out defenders, no problem, go high point the football with that 6'6" frame. Now, he can be lethal. Even though he runs a 4.7, he can be lethal on seam routes, catch the defense napping vertically. We know a seam route is one of the nastiest routes for a tight end to run in the league. And if you just know how to have the nuances to run it at a high level, you're going to be getting a lot of production and a good bit of hitting your head on the goalpost for touchdowns. Now, he took snaps in line, in the slot, out wide, produced from all 3 alignments. So that's what makes Colston Loveland potentially able to go higher on this list. He does get overwhelmed by power rushers, though, at times. He struggles to sustain blocks throughout the whistle to really see that finish through the rep and finish through the contact. I think his routes could be sharper. I think he could create some more separation and more advantage with how big his frame is. He does get pushed around too easily at the point of attack in the run game, and he's still very raw at pass protection as well. He has limited experience at pass pro. But overall, a guy who plays like a big wide receiver, runs a 4.7, graded at 86 by PFF, and is good in the slot as a tight end, which I feel like inline tight ends are slowly but surely dying in the NFL because the more we see a slot tight end that's available to do things like a Colston Loveland, like a Kyle Pitts, like a Travis Kelce that can line up in the slot, it's being more sought after. So I've got Colston Loveland out of Michigan at number 4. At number 3, a sneaky, athletic, competitive tight end that is not high on a lot of people's draft boards, but his tape does not lie. That's Elijah Arroyo out of Miami. 6'5", 250 pounds, ran a 4.69, 35 catches for 590 yards and 7 touchdowns. Now, he was graded a little low at 71.7 by PFF. His knee injuries in 2022 and 2023 did limit him to 8 total games, so that probably is some cause for concern. You're going to see NFL medical staffs have to go a lot deeper on that aspect to really see his timeline, his stretch of durability for such a physical sport like football and playing it at the highest level in the NFL. He somewhat reminds me of a Kyle Pitts in a way. Athletic tight end, gets a lot of action in the slot, does very well in open field situations. And, at a 4.69 speed, he can move. He really can move and challenge safeties vertically and on those seam routes. He can stretch the field at a 4.69 speed. I mean, he just really plays like a wide receiver. And that's one of the big pluses I like about some of these modern tight ends, some of these more athletic wide receiver-like tight ends in the NFL is I just think they're more versatile. I think they are more pro-style friendly, modern-day NFL offenses want a tight end like a Colston Loveland, like an Elijah Arroyo, like a Kyle Pitts, if Kyle Pitts can ever come around to what we expect him to be. And what's good about Elijah Arroyo is he is a technical route manipulator, a technical route technician, really a route technician, excuse me. He's going to set up his defenders for failure almost immediately with his pace, with his head fakes. He's very good at that. Natural hands. And even though, again, he runs that 4.69, he can threaten the field vertically if he needs to. He can find the soft spots in the zones. He's a legit red zone threat as well. He's going to fight for those extra yards after the catch, which is great to see. Now, he can get overpowered by edge rushers, edge defenders in the run game. And I think overall he can improve more as a strong blocker. Now, the production sample size is pretty limited because we didn't only have one full season of high-level performance against top, we did only see one full season of really high-level performance against the top competition to evaluate him because, again, in 2022 and 2023, he was injured and hampered by those knee injuries, which is very unfortunate. So we're going to have to see what that translates to in the next level and what type of production and sample size you can get from Elijah Arroyo in the NFL. But I still love him, all things considered. He is still the number 3 tight end for me in the 2025 NFL draft. At number 2, give me Mason Taylor out of LSU, the son of Jason Taylor, as we know, legendary defensive end for the Miami Dolphins. Mason Taylor, 6'5", 251 pounds, ran a 4.64, which is very solid for the position. 55 catches, 546 yards, only 2 touchdowns on the year. He does have a 50-50 split in his snaps between inline and slot, which shows that he can be versatile and is probably comfortable at playing both positions however much is needed. Now, he did grade at a 67.8 for Pro Football Focus, so that is a bit on the lower end. But 37 of his 55 catches actually went for first downs, which is clearly something that, Brian Kelly, Garrett Nussmeier really enjoyed within the offensive game plan. This guy's a natural hands catcher as well, but he does play like a slot receiver. That's why I was putting him a little higher on my list. A very seamless change of direction. He's a reliable target in clutch situations. Again, when 37 of your 55 catches on the season go for a first down, you're going to always have something positive to say about that. He can create those chunk plays after catch as well, over 700 yards after the catch in his college career. He does have advanced routes, which help him create separation consistently against defenders. He's excellent at tracking the ball on vertical routes downfield. Now, he can get overpowered by defenders in pass protection. He's not a very strong run blocker. He does need better route running tempo for those veteran DBs who can kind of telegraph a move if they've seen it a few times before, those veteran defensive backs and just secondary players that have seen it all. You might not be able to fool them as much if your route tempo isn't as up to speed as it needs to be. And he's not very explosive downfield versus safeties, but that's not necessarily needed as much from tight ends. Now, Elijah Arroyo, Colston Loveland, they'll be more prone to stretch a secondary on a seam or just, stack a safety downfield if need be, depending on how the route is ran. You're not going to see a lot of that from Mason Taylor, but this guy does line up well in the slot. He is very athletic for the position, and he plays like a slot receiver, which is very good. And at number 1, the best tight end in the 2025 NFL draft, it's going to be Tyler Warren out of Penn State. 6'6", 256 pounds, ran a 4.68, 104 catches, 1,230 yards, 8 touchdowns. So clearly we understand the level of production he brought to the table, which has a strong case in earning him the number 1 tight end in the class. 47% of his snaps came from the slot. He was graded the highest in the class at the position at 91.3 by Pro Football Focus. This is a big guy, big target with a wide catch radius, reliable hands at all times, no matter where he's aligning on the field. He'll find you those soft spots in the zone as well. Very dynamic after the catch. Again, he's a big-time athlete. And he's a versatile weapon because we saw Penn State's offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki, have Tyler Warren in the Wildcat, running options, jet passes. I mean, he is very versatile. Like, I'm not going to come out with all this Saints gear around me and say that he's the next Taysom Hill, but watching his tape and watching him be versatile and knowing that he ran some options, ran some wildcats, like actually had some rushing touchdowns, I think 2 of them, if I'm not mistaken, out of the gun/wildcat, that's what's making me think that. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be his exact role in the National Football League, but it's going to be something that offensive coordinators and head coaches take note of, and they're going to work that into the offense best that they can if the situation presents itself. This guy's a very dangerous seam runner. He can stack defenders. He's a red zone nightmare. He's going to box out defenders easily if he needs to in order to get his leverage and get his separation to win, have a better success rate in the NFL. Now, he can get overwhelmed by power rushers and pass protection and as an inline blocker. And, the more tight end positions go on, the more I feel bad for listing it a con as them being a blocker because that's not what they're called upon to do. But if you are a solid blocker at the tight end position, like, people are going to appreciate that. That can help increase your draft stock. But the big thing is, can you find the soft spots in the zone, find the soft spots in the coverage? Can you go up in high point of football? Can you be great on contested catches? Are you a natural hands catcher? Are you a red zone threat? Like, I feel like that's a lot of the things that people look for in a modern day tight end for the NFL. And Tyler Warren brings all that to the table. I do think he relies more on athleticism than technique to actually create separation against man coverage. But again, he can kind of counteract that with finding those soft spots in the zone very well and being dynamic after the catch, being that versatile weapon. So this guy will be able to get coached up more, have better route running technique, and maybe see a good bit of snaps, even more snaps, more than 47% come from the slot. Y'all get in the chat and in the comments, let me know what you thought of my top 5 NFL draft tight end rankings, as that does conclude episode 100. Wow, just to say it again, episode 100 of the NFL with AJL, as we chopped it up on a great loaded episode. NFL draft, edge rusher, and tight end rankings, new NFL rule changes, and add the best first round pick in the 2025 draft, the choices rather, for every NFC East team. That was episode 100 of the NFL with AJL. I appreciate everybody jumping into the show tonight, as you could have been anywhere else in the world, but you were right here tapped in with us on the show. And for that, as always, we are forever, ever grateful. Y'all, please make sure to like and share the stream, wherever you may be watching. Subscribe on YouTube, hit the bell, please, and thank you, so you never miss a post on the channel, whether it's a live, whether it is a short, whether it's a highlight of the show from a medium form clip. We have it all pumping out for you guys. That QR code on the corner of the screen will give you every bit of social media and podcast content at NFL with AJL on all social media and podcast platforms. If you can't find me, I promise you're simply not looking hard enough. If you want to get over on YouTube and drop a super chat, a super like, a super thanks to donate monetarily to the show, I'll be very grateful for that. No donation is too small or too big, obviously, and anything you would consider given to the show, we would be very grateful for it. Or you can DM me on social media at NFL with AJL to discuss possibly still compensating the show in that aspect too. Don't forget about Buy and Sell with AJL for all your worldwide professional real estate needs, and HyperX.com for all of your starter podcasting and gaming equipment. Please use code AJL. We will be back on Friday with episode 101 of the NFL with AJL. I love you guys. I need you guys. And I will see y'all in episode 101.